element, and no one can doubt that the inventor of the tarot, as a game, was conversant with the science of the occult of his time. But what can one think of the 22 trump cards which are of earlier origin than the other cards? These strange compositions were reproduced in 1392 by a conqueror for the enjoyment of our unfortunate King Charles VI, but they seem to have been already known by Raymond Booley, a clever alchemist monk, who lived from 1234 to 1315. 8. Brought out most clearly the attributed to Montaigne. The two editions which we have of this game only go back to 1470 and 1485, it is true, but one supposes, not without reason, that the engraver of this period was inspired by an older model. Now, this unknown model can only be looked for in the tarot whose Baldini cards are at a systematic extension. The artist, very skilled in his art, but in no way initiated, wanted to correct the tarot by slanting it in accordance with the demands of his logic and philosophy. In a logical way he tried to classify figures whose incoherence shocked him. This explains this extremely artistic game of 50 subjects grouped in series of tens. The first of these tens designates the hierarchy of social classes: the beggar, valet, artisan, merchant, nobleman, knight, doge, king, emperor and pope. The 9 muses and Apollo make up the second ten. The third is devoted to the sciences which encroach upon the fourth, partly kept for the virtues. Finally the last 10 contains the 7 planets, as well as the 8th sphere, the first impetus and the first cause. In this game all the figures of the tarot are found, slightly modified and adapted according to the ideas of the artist. The latter has, therefore, composed his work in accordance with traditional tarots. If the opposite had been done, one cannot conceive how 22 subjects would have been arbitrarily taken out of a sumptuous collection of 50. Moreover, the naivety of the style would guarantee the earlier origin of the tarot. The 22 early tarots must, however, be connected with the naivety, those instruction cards not yet used for playing with. An adept of the 13th century would have wanted to make a Kabbalistic book with the help of these richly colored pictures which enjoyed such popularity at that time. Their variety allowed him to choose those which it was possible to link with the 10 Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, then, by extension, with the 22 letters of sacred alphabet. 24. Thus it was possible for the original outline of our tarot to come into existence. But is it certain that we are in the presence of the work of an individual? Did a man of genius conceive the tarot as a whole? This is extremely doubtful, if we are to judge by the changes which the tarot has undergone during the course of time. The oldest specimens are not the most perfect. From the symbolic point of view, they are of a hesitating symbolism, as yet finding its way. It was the successive copyists who finally gave us a tarot in which every detail has its significance, which harmonizes with the whole. One must admit that among the illustrators, some, gifted with a sort of divining sense of symbols, introduced into their reproductions lucky variants which later prevailed. Others, carried away by an imagination which did not obey the mysterious directives of tradition, could only distort the original. Although they were continuous, the deviations did not form a school, for a vague but sound instinct brought our most skilled illustrators into the right path of pure symbolism. So, in the tarot, we receive an anonymous heritage, a work of genius, thanks to the collaboration of various humble people who copied from each other with inspired artlessness, producing, without realizing it, a pure and marvelous work. 9. The initiation value of the tarot. We can consider as pointless any discussion on the age of the tarot as soon as we bring in the intrinsic value of this strange document, relatively modern in its form, but doubtless extremely old in its subject. This collection of symbols has excited all those who have managed to decipher them. Let us listen to the Abbé Constant, who published the works from which proceeds, for a very large part, contemporary occultism. 10. It is a monumental and unique work, said the Adept Levite when speaking of the tarot. Strong and simple like the architecture of the pyramids, consequently long-lasting like them, it is a book which contains in essence all knowledge and whose infinite combinations can solve all problems. It is a book which, as it speaks, makes us think, the inspiring and regulating force of all possible conceptions, the masterpiece, perhaps, of the human mind, and surely one of the finest things which antiquity has left to us, the universal key, whose name has been understood and explained only by the enlightened scholar Guillaume Postel II. It is a unique text whose first characters alone sent the religious mind of Saint Marin XII into ecstasy and would have restored the power of reason to the sublime and unfortunate Swedenborg. 13. To these, taken from Dogme de la Haute Magie, page 68, one should add the following, taken from Ritual, page 355, where it is said, still concerning the tarot, it is a real philosophical machine which stops the minds from wandering, all the while leaving us our initiative and freedom. It is mathematics applied to the absolute, the linking of the positive to the ideal. It is a lottery of thoughts, all as rigorously fair, like the numbers. In short, it is perhaps at the same time the most simple and the greatest achievement that the human spirit has ever conceived. But it is for the reader himself to judge the tarot, by learning to distinguish in it the marvels which are promised. We are going to proceed methodically, and show how one can make a silent book speak. 25. Chapter 2. Signs revealing the secrets of the tarot. The wheel. Amongst the tarot cards there is one il which does not bear any number. It is the Fool that this peculiarity seems to deprive of any specific rank. One hesitates, therefore, when it comes to assigning to this card a place in the pack. Should it precede the Magician Arcana 1 or follow the World Arcana 21? This question does not arise when the tarot is placed as a wheel, as the word Odo suggests a word formed from the tarot by Guillaume Postel, since the Fool is thus placed between the beginning and the end, where it symbolizes the irrational and incomprehensible infinite whence we come, and to which we are destined to return. Thus formed is naturally divided into two halves, each being made up of 11 figures. It is practical from the point of view of establishing the links between these two, put them into two rows as shown below. 111. The placing of the cards in the shape of a wheel is very important, because the circle, the analogies of opposites. By comparing the figures which are opposite each other, from one row to the other, it is impossible not to recognize a certain contrast, especially between the arcanas 1 and 0, 7 and 16, 10 and 13, 11 and 12. J4. It is obvious in fact that the Magician 1 could not be anything else but an intelligent and skillful man, knowing precisely what he is doing, whereas the fool is senseless, walking blindly, not knowing where he is going. The Chinoti 7, which bears a triumphant rider, rises above the lightning-struck tower 16, from the top of which two persons are falling down. Thus the exaltation of success is linked, in the tarot, with the catastrophic fall, as if to remind us of the Tarpeian rock near the capital. The Wheel of Fortune 10 seems to promise an unexpected piece of luck, as 26. Threat of inexorable fate. This fundamental distinction is reflected. Strength 11 opposes creative power to the in the tarot, whose two halves correspond to impotence of the Hanged Man 12, whose the binary columns, two man and a woman, arms are bound to the spirit, and inner active fire, and to the, although less striking, the contrast soul, a sensitive surrounding vapor, to the, nonetheless exists, so that one may still infer sulfur and the mercury of the alchemists. That each half of the tarot must, as a whole, have its general significance, contrasting with that of the other half. Jachin and Boaz. How can one determine this general twofold significance? To start with, we may be tempted to give to the first line a favorable significance, and to the second an unfavorable one, but on looking more closely it would not take us long to put things right. It is less a question of good and evil than a question of activity and passivity. The first